Hello everyone, and welcome to another 3ABN Up Close. We're coming to you from the Houston West Seventh-day Adventist Church in Houston, Texas. And we'd like to give a Texas-sized thank you to our live audience who is joining us for this program. Today we will discuss a devastating condition that affects millions of people worldwide. This condition is no respecter of persons. It affects the old and the young, the rich and the poor, people of all religious persuasions and people of no religious persuasions, males and females. In the United States alone, recent studies report that over 19 million people suffer from this condition, and 12 million of those are women. More notably, nearly 50% of those who are trapped in the snare of this condition don't recognize what is wrong with them. Our topic today is depression, not the occasional bout with the blues that is common to humanity, but the more dangerous medical condition that afflicts so many souls. But life doesn't have to be swallowed up in the shadow of this dark cloud. There is help and there is hope. Our first guest is Sandy Williams. Sandy and her husband Lee have 3 beautiful daughters, ages 20, 9, and 3. The Williams own and operate Ashley's Furniture, named after their oldest daughter and located in Ardmore, Oklahoma. Sandy is a stay-at-home mom who now delights in her responsibilities as a wife and mother. She takes special pleasure in providing services for her family that others may take for granted. And she also enjoys reading, researching various subjects, and walking in the great outdoors. But it has not always been like this. Sandy sat down with us and told us how her depression affected her throughout her whole life, and especially her family. Listen to this.
Prior to the Depression Recovery Program, I could never really remember a time in my life I wasn't depressed. But going through the program and realizing the causes of the depression, I had had doctors telling me, and I knew I was depressed. Every doctor told me I was depressed, but nobody ever gave me any causes or anything to look to as to what was causing the depression. During the depression, I wasn't able to exercise. I wasn't able to leave my house. And I really hate to say this, but in all honesty, it took every ounce of energy I had to even take a shower. So I would go for days without taking a shower. For me, I think was the thought, was the distorted thinking too. Growing up thinking, what's wrong with me? Always asking what's wrong with me. And so as an adult, always looking for what's wrong with me, and changing that thought and seeing that, asking myself, what's right with me? And finding a lot of right things in my life and my family. Prior to the program, depression, all I can say is it was a black cloud over me every day. I would be in bed for 5 days at a time. My husband would wake the girls up and get them ready for school, and I would just lay there. My heart's desire has always been to be a good mother and a good wife, and the things that I desired so much, I wasn't able to accomplish. During the darkest part of my depression was whenever my 2-year-old and I were at home alone, and the depression was just overwhelming. I sat in the living room floor and rocked her and just prayed, God, you're going to have to do something because I can't keep living like this. And I called my husband and I told him that I couldn't take care of Jayden. He would have to come get her. And I went into a behavioral med place for a couple weeks. And not long after that, I was listening to 107.1, never listened to the radio station before in my life. And I heard about the Depression Recovery Program. And I decided I try something different. I've tried everything else, so that was the turning point in my life.
It's hard to imagine what that must have felt like, but we're so thankful that Sandy is with us tonight. And I'd like to thank her very much for coming, and come on up here. We want to welcome Sandy Williams.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your testimony.
Thank you.
I just want to ask you one question. Did you feel guilty
Guilt.
by this?
Guilt every hour. I mean, there wasn't a minute of guilt.
Bless your
Just
heart.
sitting here watching that just brought tears to my eyes, thinking how horrible that feeling was. It was just the most debilitating thing I've ever gone through in my life.
Of course. You know, sometimes people who are going through depression are ashamed of their condition and they don't know how to reach out for help. But you mentioned that on the radio, which I know that you never watched it before or listened to it before, the Lord had you tune in that day.
Definitely.
What program did you go to?
I went to the Depression Recovery Program with Dr. Neil Nedley.
With Dr. Nedley. And what changes did Dr. Nedley have you make in your life?
Just lifestyle changes, things that you would, really common sense things, but people that are so depressed, I mean, you can't even comprehend how to get out of it. But just like exercising, changing your eating habits, drinking water, meditating, spending time with the Lord. When I was depressed, I couldn't even open my Bible. I mean, I would pace the floors, and I just felt caged and isolated, and it was horrible. It was very horrible.
So as this program, then, you began working in the program, things began to turn around for you, didn't they? Let's look at just something that the recovery program has done for Sandy. Let's take a look.
Following the Depression Recovery Program, the thing that I learned the most about it was most of it was just common sense things that you could apply to your life. It wasn't hard, wasn't very difficult at all, but I found that it has transformed my life completely. My husband has his wife back, my children have their mother back, and I have my life back.
Well, praise the Lord.
Hallelujah.
Sandy, tell me something. What was the thing that was the turning point in the recovery program for you?
The turning point was knowing that all of these feelings everything that I had been going through, there was a name to it. There was reasons for it. I mean, during that period in my life, I felt like like I said, there's something wrong with me. What's wrong with me?
Did you feel like no one would understand because
Nobody
you couldn't
understood.
understand?
And I even heard things like, snap out of it, and you have everything to be thankful for, Sandy. You have a husband that loves you. You have 3 wonderful children. You know what's the deal? But unless you have experienced it, I don't think anybody could really understand
I'm sure
what a
that they don't.
debilitating disease it is.
You know, and I want all of us to try to remember this, that it seems to make sense for some of us that when we see someone who may be rehearsing the past and negative thinking and dwelling on the negative, we want to just shake them and say those kind of things. But all that did was induce more guilt for you, I'm sure.
Yes, and a lot of times it wasn't even thinking about the past. It was just, I know the past affected me, but it wasn't that I was thinking about the past. It was just, I know there was a lot of distorted thinking, but I don't know. It was
Well, praise the Lord that
God
you
is
found
good.
Dr. Nedley's
Yes,
program
yes.
and that he has helped you see the light.
Yes, hallelujah.
Well, coming up next, we're going to be talking with Dr. Neil Nedley about some of the common symptoms and the causes of depression. So please don't go away.
next week on Up Close.
We're going to be talking about teenage pregnancy.
We were together for almost a year, and we were in love.
Looking for love in all the wrong places.
I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to do. I'm sure my parents were going to be upset.
Receiving acceptance from their peers is so important. Wanting to fit in is so important.
Next week on Up Close, teen pregnancy. Don't miss it.
Welcome back to Up Close. Now it's time to introduce our expert guest, Dr. Neil Nedley. Dr. Nedley was the founding medical director of the Lifestyle Center of America in Oklahoma, and he currently practices internal medicine at Nedley Clinics in Ardmore, Oklahoma. He has authored several health books, including one on the subject that we are focusing on today, and it is entitled Depression: The Way Out. Please welcome Dr. Nedley. You know, this topic has a special interest to me because I am finding, as I go around ministering, that there are more and more people who are caught up in the snare of depression. And it seems that some Christians feel that, in particular, feel guilty about having this because they think, well, the Lord should, you know, if I'm a Christian, I shouldn't have depression. But could you share with our audience, what are some of the common cause or symptoms of depression so that we might recognize if someone we love or even if we ourselves are going through it?
Most people with depression have one of two symptoms and maybe both of these symptoms. One of them can be deep sadness or emptiness. Some people don't have the crying spells of deep sadness, but have a feeling of emptiness. They just have this center core that feels empty, like there's something missing. The second very common symptom is apathy, where the individual just doesn't have the joy or the energy of everyday living. They get up in the morning not really looking forward to the day, not being very interested in what is going to be happening during that day or what could happen. And those, most depressed people will have one or both of those symptoms. And then there are 7 others that the majority of depressed patients will have, such as sleep changes, appetite changes, lack of concentration, the inability to be able to make sound decisions and recognizing that they don't have that ability, morbid thoughts, even fatigue. That's one of the most common symptoms I see in my internal medicine practice is people are coming to me asking me why they're so tired. And it could be due to depression, it may be due to other things, but I have to ask them these other questions to see if indeed it's major depression as the underlying cause of fatigue.
Is it true that sometimes just aches and pains that no one can explain, can depression cause that?
Yes. Now, what I've listed to you are the psychiatric Bible's definitions of depression based on those symptoms, but there's a lot of consequences, symptom consequences. For instance, headaches. One of the most common causes of migraine headaches as well as tension headaches, and the common headache is actually depression.
Really?
And unless we find out that the headache is due to depression, we can't get to the cause of the depression, and thus the headaches last for years, and the people are really on even narcotic pain medications on a daily basis to try to deal with these headaches when they think the problem is the headache, but in reality it's not, it's the depression.
What are some of the common causes for depression?
Well, there are 10 major hit categories that can cause depression. Depression is a multifactorial disease, meaning that there's not usually just one cause. There's usually 4 out of those 10 causes. And this is something that we elicited from our research in the medical literature. I found over 150 different causes of major depression. And at first it was overwhelming. But then when I began to look at these 150 causes, I realized they fit into one of 10 categories. And then once we started looking at the categories, we realized that most depressed people had 4 active hits at least. Some had 6 or 7. I think in Sandy's case that we just heard from, there were probably about 6 or 7 hits that were going on in her case. And some of those hits we can't do anything about. 2 of them we can't do anything about.
Genetics.
Genetic is one. And developmental, at least as adults, we've already developed. We've already had the bad childhood or whatever it was in the developmental stage that helped to bring it about as well. But interestingly, that's only 2 hits. That's not enough to cause major depression. Even bad genes in the worst upbringing in the world is not enough to cause depression. You have to have some other hits that are active. And another hit is lifestyle hits. This means lack of exercise, lack of appropriate light. Light through the eyes actually helps the brain produce serotonin, an important neurotransmitter in alleviating depression. Deep breathing, these are lifestyle hits. Then we have circadian rhythm hits. This is being on a regular schedule. All of us function best on a regular schedule. Regular time for sleeping, regular times for eating, and trying not to get too far off that schedule on weekends, which is where a lot of people mess up, and then Monday is so blue.
Let me ask a quick question here, because I know a lot of youth in America will just push it to the edge of the envelope, and then because they're getting up early each day for classes.
Yes.
I used to do this in college myself. When the weekend comes, you try to sleep and catch up, but it actually is more harmful to your body. Is that right?
It's actually better to get on a good schedule Monday through Friday that you can maintain on Saturday and Sunday. This catch-up work on the weekend makes the weekend inefficient. You don't get near as much done as you would otherwise, and then Monday becomes very blue because you've gotten off of your schedule and you have to get your circadian rhythm back into line again.
Maybe that's why Mondays are so blue for so many
That's
people.
right. And actually light is an important part of setting our circadian rhythm. People that are depressed and have problems with insomnia, for instance, if they're exposed to bright light within 10 minutes of awakening and exposed to it for 30 minutes, it can reset their body clock and actually even help hormonal depression.
And you know, something that's interesting, as you were speaking, I just thought, Sandy, you mentioned, did you mention something about liking the room dark? It seems that a lot of people who are depressed want to keep the room dark. They want to shut the world out, so they shut out the light, shut out everything that could be helping them.
Darkness.
Darkness.
Isolating, yes.
Yes, isn't that interesting? Now, you've just briefly touched on something that I don't want to pass over, the hormonal.
Yes.
As I was researching some things for this program, I found out that over 19 million people just in the United States have depression, serious depression. 12 million of those are women, so that's nearly 2/3. And it seems that, particularly for women in my age group who are closing in on menopause, that's becoming something quite frightening because of the hormonal fluctuations. Some women, a lot of women suffer from PMS, but then is it PMDD, the disorder? There's like 5% of the women. So what is it about hormones that causes this depression?
Well, it's actually hormonal drops that tend to bring it about more so than anything else. This is why postpartum depression is also very common. You know, the hormone level is high when you're carrying the baby. When you deliver that baby, the hormones just rapidly drop off. And within 2 weeks, 2/3 of women actually experience the blues, not major postpartum depression, but the blues just simply from the hormonal drop. Menopause, the ovaries quit producing the high hormonal outputs, and so you have a hormone withdrawal state that is being produced. Interestingly, one of the best therapies for hormonal depression is bright light within 10 minutes of awakening for about 30 minutes. As women get into more hormonal problems, they need more light. And it's actually one of the best preventions of postpartum depression. Of course, in the postpartum state, the circadian rhythms are off, the baby's waking up, every 2 hours in the middle of the night. So there's a number of hits going on at the same time. There's a social hit with this, infant in need of care. Interestingly, the factor that is most preventive as well as the best treatment for it is whatever time you should wake up, set your alarm to that, and then get exposed to bright light for 30 minutes from awakening. And that will produce that serotonin that will start to actually reset the body clock and can help dramatically.
What a wonderful tip. So I hope you all took note of that. Well, coming up next, we are going to introduce you to a woman who began sinking into depression following the death of her husband. And we'll learn how she was able to break free from the clutches of this condition by practicing a unique set of concepts that have been proven effective. So don't go away.
Are you or someone you love struggling with depression? Are you looking for a way out from the depths of despair? If so, we have just the book for you. Find light and hope as you read The Ultimate Survivor. We'll even include a set of recipes specifically designed for those struggling with depression. For your free gift, just write to us today at Up Close, Post Office Box 220, West Frankfort, Illinois, 62896. Or call us during regular business hours, 800-752-3226 or 618-627-4651. Ask for Up Close offer number 3.
Welcome back to Up Close. Our topic today is depression. Most of us have suffered normal sadness and situational depression at some point in our lives. But have you ever thought about what it would be like to suffer a major depressive episode? Our next guest is Colleen Harrell from Ardmore, Oklahoma. She has 1 daughter and 2 granddaughters who live in El Paso, Texas. Now, Colleen was formerly an engineering manager for the SBC Corporation, the telephone company. And after her retirement from SBC, she really did something interesting. She pursued a second career as a field correspondent for true crime magazines based in New York and Canada. But her husband of 49 years succumbed to Alzheimer's disease in 1998. And following his death, Colleen began to realize that her lingering sadness was due to more than grieving her husband's loss. Somewhere along the line, she had slipped into the pit of depression. Let's listen to the story that she shared with us.
My depression came on so gradually, I was hardly aware that it was happening. It started when my husband had Alzheimer's. We of necessity had to isolate ourselves, or did isolate ourselves. And it was only after his death I began to realize that I no longer had any desire or will to go out among people. And I kept to myself more and more every day. And I reacted defensively when anyone would urge me to get out and to resume a normal life. And it wasn't until I didn't really realize the depth of my depression until I found myself avoiding going to the mailbox until after dark so I wouldn't have to interact in any way with neighbors. I liked my neighbors, but I just didn't want to talk with them. I just wanted to be by myself and be left alone. I started not answering the phone when people called, and I'm ashamed to say that I often wouldn't even answer the door. I neglected myself and my house. After years of denial, I accepted that I was depressed, and it was only then that I realized that I'd lost all will and energy to do anything productive with my day for more than 2 or 3 hours. During my worst period, I would force myself to accept invitations to social functions, or I'd plan to go to church. And then at the last minute, even after I was fully dressed, I'd find myself unable to leave the house.
Well, we're happy to have Colleen with us here today, and we'd like to ask her to come on up. So please help me welcome Colleen. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you for sharing your story with us, Colleen. I know it takes a brave heart to get on national television and share this story. But let me ask you something. How long did it take you to come into that appreciation of knowing that you were depressed? You mentioned you denied it for some time.
I actually think the depression started even before my husband's death, during the stress involved with his illness. But it took, I would say, probably 5 years, because when I first realized I was cutting myself off from everyone, I just thought it was love of solitude. I wanted to be alone. I felt better alone. Mm-hmm. And so it was at least 5 years before I fully acknowledged to myself that I was depressed.
You know, I just want to stop here for one moment and point out that research says that there are probably, of all the people who have been diagnosed with major depression, that's probably only 50%. That maybe up to 50% of the people who are suffering from it don't understand what they are suffering. Now, how did you begin to come out of this depression?
Well, since my main symptoms seemed to be a complete loss of will, just complete loss of desire to do anything. And actually, I discovered omega-3 when I was taking omega-3 without thinking of using it as to help depression. Mm-hmm. But I was taking it for health reasons, and I just felt myself feeling better and still didn't realize that it was the omega-3 until Dr. Nedley. I read an article in the Ardmorites about Dr. Nedley's Uplift Bar.
Yes.
And he was my personal physician, and I'd never admitted to him that I was depressed. And so I connected the dots. I realized that the omega-3 was what was making me feel better and making me come out a little more and just feeling like getting out more.
Wonderful. Well, one of the common symptoms that Colleen struggled with was sleep deprivation. So let's take a look at how she dealt with this.
I realize now that one of my biggest problems was sleep deprivation. It started when my husband was ill, and then it continued for years after. For nearly 5 years, I would wake up almost every 2 hours on the dot, and I would turn the TV on and let the sound of the TV lull me back to sleep. And I didn't realize the damage it was doing with the flickering light that Dr. Nedley described, the damage that did to you. And when he explained how classical music can cause a response in the brain, something clicked, and I knew that it was preferable to the TV, because he had already talked about TV addiction and how harmful that was. So when I started my 2 granddaughters, at the time I didn't even have the will to go out and look for CDs or classical music. I knew nothing about it. But my 2 granddaughters had, a couple of years before, given me 2 CDs for my birthday, and I got them out. I'd seldom played them. I got them out and started going to sleep each night to one of them that was titled Starlight Classics. And I found that I could sleep. I went to sleep and rested for hours. If I woke up, I just turned the tape back on and would listen, would fall back to sleep. And within a week, I was enjoying the first full night's sleep I'd had in years.
Well, praise the Lord.
Oh, it's so true. And even now, if I fail to listen to them, or if I get back into watching TV again, I can feel my thoughts getting scattered. It just makes a tremendous difference.
It does.
It's amazing how that alone helped me.
Well, you know, it's interesting. For Sandy, she wanted to sleep all the time. For you, you had the opposite, where you were having trouble sleeping. And I know that they say that if you want to drive someone insane, that all you have to do is keep waking them up over and over again, and we get a cognitive impairment.
Absolutely. I believe that alone, the sleep deprivation alone, contributed perhaps the most to the whole problem.
I'm sure that Dr. Nedley is going to confirm that in just a moment.
I do want to add that this getting up early and or getting up and going out and seeing the light is almost as good as the classical music, perhaps better.
So now let me ask you something else, Colleen. Do you get your mail early in the day now?
I go and I visit with my neighbors.
Good, good. Well, we're just so thankful that you shared this with us. Thank you. Thank you. Well, coming up next, we're going to talk to Dr. Neil Nedley again about what can be done for those who suffer from depression. And then a little later, we're going to be taking questions from our live audience. So please don't go away.
Next week on Up Close.
We're going to be talking about teenage pregnancy.
We were together for almost a year, and we were in love.
Looking for love in all the wrong places.
I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to do. I'm sure my parents were going to be upset.
Receiving acceptance from their peers is so important. Wanting to fit in is so important.
Next week on Up Close, teen pregnancy. Don't miss it.
Welcome back to Up Close. We're talking about depression, and we've heard from a couple of people who have experienced this condition in their lives. Now we're talking with Dr. Neil Nedley, a practicing physician of internal medicine at Nedley Clinics in Ardmore, Oklahoma. Dr. Nedley, in your book, Depression, The Way Out, you focus a lot on lifestyle changes, on nutrition, on exercise, on getting plenty of water and sunshine. Is there any research to back up why these health changes actually do improve the depression?
Yeah, absolutely. There's research. Actually, we quote about 1,000 different scientific references in our book, Depression, The Way Out. And most of the time, it's just looking at an isolated factor, like omega-3 that we heard from Colleen. And actually, omega-3 increase and tryptophan increase can significantly improve mood and depression. What's amazing about the program that these two ladies went through, and that has now been duplicated many other places, that when we put a combination of lifestyle factors together, like nutrition and exercise and light, and analyzing our thoughts and getting rid of the distorted thoughts, and actually improving our spiritual focus, actually contemplating on the Word of God, which improves frontal lobe circulation. When all of those things are combined, we see dramatic improvement that really is unprecedented in the medical literature. People should not be getting better this quick, according to the experts, nor should they be getting better and staying better without relapsing back into depression. And so the beautiful thing is when we put a combination of these factors together, we do see a more pronounced effect.
Well, now for our audience, tell us, because I know I have recommended to several people, and you mentioned the omega-3, Colleen. I've recommended to people that, because of listening to you, that they would take English walnuts, or even a better source would be flaxseed. What are some of the, how does the omega-3 and tryptophan, and what are some sources for tryptophan? That would be.
Yeah, tryptophan is turned into serotonin, and tryptophan is going to be found in, actually flaxseed has some tryptophan in it. Soy is an excellent source of tryptophan. Gluten flour, which is the wheat protein, is very high in tryptophan. And there are other good sources of tryptophan out there. We like tryptophan combined with carbohydrates because otherwise it doesn't get into the brain. Meat has some tryptophan in it too, but meat is very low in carbohydrate. It's virtually deficient in carbohydrate. And so the tryptophan does not cross the blood-brain barrier and get into the brain.
So let me make sure that our audience, I want to make sure that I understand it and that the audience is getting this. When we have omega-3 fatty acids, when we have tryptophan with carbohydrates, this is actually helping our body to naturally produce serotonin.
Correct.
So carbohydrates have really gotten a bad rap, haven't they?
They have gotten a bad rap, and unfortunately, you know, some carbs are bad. The refined carbohydrates, the sugar, the sodas, this type of thing is not, you know, the best. And actually, this type of diet can lead to depression. But unfortunately, some of the more narrow extremists have thrown out the baby with the bathwater. Yes. And that means they've thrown out all of the natural carbohydrates. And if you do that, you're going to be on a carbohydrate deficient program that's going to lead to poor frontal lobe circulation, poor ability to make disciplined decisions, and actually lead to depression. And that's another reason why depression is on the increase, simply because these low-carb diets have become pretty common.
Yes. Now, what about the serotonin, what do they call it, reuptake?
Yeah, the serotonin reuptake inhibitors, those are the drugs.
Okay, those are the drugs. Is there any reason why a Christian shouldn't take something? I mean, is there a time that it's appropriate to take those drugs? There
is a time that's appropriate to take those drugs. We recommend them in severe depression as a jump start to get the frontal lobe circulation improved. These drugs can improve frontal lobe circulation, can help improve your ability to function, so you can incorporate some of these lifestyle principles. However, we use them in a time-limited approach where, you know, we try to withdraw them within 6 months, and often we're able to withdraw them in 3 to 4 months. Once the person finds out the underlying causes of depression in their life, we deal with those hit causes, and then they're able to easily withdraw from the drugs and not relapse back into depression.
Sandy, you said that you had gone through depression most of your life. You were living in depression. Did you take any of the antidepressants to help you over the hump?
Probably everyone out there.
Yes. And there's about 15 on the market right now, isn't there?
I've tried several.
But none of those really worked for you. It was when you got into the lifestyle changes, that's when you felt the difference. Isn't that amazing? Mm-hmm. Essentially, what these antidepressants do, they are treating the symptom, but they're not treating the underlying cause.
And unfortunately, they have side effects. They cause an I don't care attitude. They increase impulsiveness, which is not a good thing. That's one of the reasons why suicide rates go up at first on these drugs, because they're increasing impulsiveness before they improve the depression. And so people need to be observed on this type of program. They can cause an I don't care attitude, actually decreasing motivation in some instances. And so that's why we use them in a time-limited approach, and we're trying to withdraw them from these drugs. One of the take-home messages I'd like our listening audience to have, and actually the audience out here, is this, that there are as many treatments for depression as there are causes. That means there's over 150 proven scientific treatments for depression. And unfortunately, the doctors and the patients aren't going to learn about them necessarily in the doctor's office. Because when a new drug comes out for depression, there's a nice, good-looking representative coming to offer me lunch and offer me pens and maybe toys with the drug name to take home to my children. But when a certain type of exercise has been shown to benefit depression, there's no exercise physiologist coming to explain to me this new study on how this type of exercise significantly improves depression. And by the way, there is a type of exercise that improves it. It's called intermittent training, or IT, significantly better than other types of exercise. So the only way is to get into the scientific literature and actually find out that the research on a lot of these things has been done, but there's not paid people to tell you about that research. So unless the doctor has done an exhaustive literature search, or unless they happen to go to the doctor who actually did the research themselves on the exercise, they're probably not going to find out about it.
Well, now, Colleen mentioned sleep deprivation. Well, she also mentioned that she was you are her personal physician.
Yes.
And she was seeing you for these many years?
Yeah, she was seeing me for things other than depression. And she, like many depressed people, she covered it well. She had a smile on her face, seemed to enjoy talking to me. Many depressed people have learned the cover very well. And so here I was, I'd written a book about depression, and she didn't even tell me that she was depressed.
So did she talk to you about her sleep deprivation, or was this something that just...
No, never touched that subject. No.
Is that a common symptom?
We were treating her for primarily chest pain and some of the associated symptoms. She had a disease called costochondritis, inflammation of the rib cage, and we were focused in on that aspect of things. But yes, it finally she finally did come to the forefront in regards to that, came to the program. And the wonderful thing, classical music, she talked about Starlight Classics. Colleen, there was more than Starlight Classics. In the daytime, what did you listen to?
Yes, in the morning, my grandchildren had given me 2 CDs, and I used the Starlight Classics to put me to sleep. And then in the mornings, I used Power Classics to do my housework, and I never miss those all day. Or it plays, not all day, but it plays quite a bit. But Power Classics will get me motivated.
One of the most common myths about classical music is that it is boring. And actually, there is more varieties of classical music than there are all of the other types of music combined. So actually, if you're a rock and roller, you're in a very narrow, limited sphere of music. And it's interesting, it's paradoxical in the same sense. Some people think the vegetarian diet is going to be limiting as well. Well, actually, studies show that the average vegetarian has a lot more variety to their diet than the average American meat eater. Yes. And the same is true with classical music. You can have a lot more variety to your music depending on the time of the day and the night and what effect you're trying to get into the brain than any of the other types of music combined. And that's why the studies are actually showing some significant benefit with classical music.
We're getting ready in just a moment to go to our live audience, and we're going to take some questions. But I feel I'm so sad that this is going by so quickly. I would love to get in, and I hope when you are asking your questions that we can talk about talk therapy, about reprogramming and renewing our minds. I just feel like we are barely scraping on the surface of this topic. But please stay tuned, because in just a moment we are going to our live audience to take some questions.
Are you or someone you love struggling with depression? Are you looking for a way out from the depths of despair? If so, we have just the book for you. Find light and hope as you read The Ultimate Survivor. We'll even include a set of recipes specifically designed for those struggling with depression. For your free gift, just write to us today at Up Close, Post Office Box 220, West Frankfort, Illinois, 62896. Or call us during regular business hours, 800-752-3226 or 618-627-4651. Ask for Up Close offer number 3.
Welcome back to Up Close. We're talking today about how to deal with depression, and now we're going to be taking some questions from our audience. So please come on down and tell us what your name is.
Hi, my name is Edie Millington, and I'm from here in Houston, Texas. And my question is actually not a question. It's just a request for you to explain a little bit more about intermittent training, the exercise program you alluded to earlier.
Okay, that's a good question. Intermittent training is where you exercise vigorously for about 45 seconds, and then you rest for about 45 seconds. And as you get more fit, you won't have to rest completely. You might do a sprint and then a walk and alternate back and forth. There are some sophisticated ways in which we can do this by measuring the heart rate. We want to get your heart rate up to a certain level, and then we alternate it by about a 10-beat level, where when it gets to a certain level, you stop exercising. Then when it goes 10 beats lower, you start exercising. So you can do it based on your heart rate as well. And your exercise maintains its aerobicness during this time. So even rest counts as exercise, which is one of the nice things about it. And what our studies showed is that it improves thyroid levels significantly compared to other forms of exercise. The regular, just go out there and do it, no pain. I mean, if you're not suffering, you're not going to be gaining. That is not true. That's a myth, the no pain, no gain. And intermittent training really helps beyond the typical exercise.
That's good. Hi, tell us your name and your question, please.
Well, I'm Grace McEwen. I'm from Houston, and I had Was wondering about the electric shock therapy that's used in depression now.
Okay. ECT, or electric shock therapy, is actually inducing a seizure to treat depression. And it has been shown to be helpful in severe forms of depression, but the side effects are significant. You have memory gaps that you'll never get back. And these can be memories all the way back from childhood, long-term memory. There are holes that are there. The natural form of ECT is contrast hydrotherapy. That's where you soak in a hot tub or in a hot shower for 3 minutes, and then you get very cold water for about a minute. And you alternate back and forth for a total of 3 cycles. And if you do that and then just rest a little bit afterwards, do that twice a day for about 3 to 4 days, you're going to start feeling significantly better by day 3 or 4. And it is it's actually pretty wonderful. We just experienced this with someone who was going to go for ECT. And she said it was dramatic, the effect that it had on her.
And no loss of memory.
Exactly.
Hi, please tell us your name and your question.
Hello, my name is Antonio Tati. I'm from Ecuador. And I'd like to ask Dr. Nedley about how you handle these patients that are out there that are obese or overweight, and that you say that carb diet. How you handle this situation with the carb diet and obese patients?
Okay, that's a good question. A lot of people think the only way to treat obesity is a low-carb diet. And actually, that is not true. In fact, there is now studies indicating that the best way to treat obesity is a combination of exercise and a lower calorie diet. It's really low in fat that's even more important than low in carbohydrate as far as treating it is concerned. And obesity can actually be one of the factors. It can be one of the hits. It's a medical condition hit that can lead to depression. And so we're continuing to put people on a lower calorie regimen that still has enough tryptophan, still has enough omega-3, enough carbohydrates, so they'll significantly lose weight, but at the same time come out of their depression.
Before we go off of this, let me ask you, sugar has a very negative effect on our brain. Is that true?
Yes, sugar has a negative effect because of the rebound. Our pancreas secretes a lot of insulin. We get mildly hypoglycemic within 30 minutes of eating a candy bar, and then it takes 4 hours for our frontal lobe to come back from that. And so that's why we recommend getting rid of the refined carbohydrates, but the natural carbohydrates are very good. They come with a lot of fiber. You can eat a lot of natural carbohydrates without gaining weight.
Okay, thank you. Hi, please tell us your name and your question.
My name is Bill Blansett, and I'm from Houston, Texas. My question is sunlight. It makes me, I guess, lethargic, and sometimes makes me want to take a nap. So sometimes I darken the room when I'm about to work, or sometimes I work better at night. So I just want to know, is there an explanation for that, or is there something I can do to be more effective in the sunlight? Or
Well, too much sunlight can, or too bright a light can over time produce too much serotonin, which does have a calming effect, a more sedating effect. That's why if you're out on the beach for all day, you don't really feel like doing anything after that time period because you've gotten almost an overload on the light. The sunlight needs to be used in moderation. But there's one other principle that you need to keep in mind, and that is most depressed people describe themselves as nighttime people. They'll start revving up 9, 10, 11 o'clock and feel great at 2 o'clock in the morning if they stay up that late. Unfortunately, however, they do have to go to sleep and they'll feel like zombies again. And those people need to have their body clocks reset. So if you're describing yourself as a nighttime person, it's not genetics at all. It's actually based on a circadian rhythm hit, and you need to get your circadian rhythms back in line and get that light therapy in the morning, and then you'll be revved up in the daytime, and when it's time to go to sleep, you'll be ready to go to sleep.
Hi, thank you for coming, and please tell us what your name is and your question.
Yes, my name is Lerma Ukebu. I'm from Houston. My question is, it seems like there are more women suffering from depression compared to men. What are the percentage like? And are the treatments about the same for both sexes?
Okay. Yeah, twice as many women suffer from depression than men. And a lot of it is due to the women's hormones that we discussed earlier. But also it has to do with the plight of women as well. It has to do with the fact that they're the primary caregivers from infants on up. They tend to have 20 different responsibilities at least that they're juggling in a day's time, where a man can focus in on maybe 2 or 3. And so those types of things produce different hits on the brain, and thus make it a little more likely for women to suffer from depression. Are the treatments different? Yes, of course, the hormonal treatments are going to be a little different. But in reality, we do the same thing for both sexes, and that is we find the underlying hits, and then we treat those underlying hits. And for women, they might have more hits to treat, but once we get the hits down to less than 3, they're going to do a whole lot better.
Hi, please tell us what your name is and your question.
Hi, my name is Javier Castillo from Houston. I wanted to ask Dr. Nedley, what's your opinion on St. John's wort as a treatment for mild to moderate depression?
St. John's wort is helpful for mild to moderate depression. It's probably the most studied herb out there for depression. However, there's very convincing evidence that it's not helpful for serious depression, for severe, serious depression. And we would actually recommend some other herbs over St. John's wort in that instance. SAM-E, for instance, can be much more helpful for severe depression. And then there are other herbs that can be helpful, such as 5-HTP and ginkgo biloba. Another problem with St. John's wort is it interacts with a lot of different medicines, and so you really can't use it with other medicines like you can the SAM-E or the 5-HTP.
Hi, welcome to the program. Please tell us your name and your question.
Hi, my name is Belinda Limon, and I'm from Houston. And my question is depression something that reoccurs after you're cured?
It can reoccur. Actually, the relapse rates are quite high in the typical American setting. The average American that suffers from major depression, once they withdraw from their antidepressants, well over half of them are going to relapse within a year. And some of them will relapse very quickly. And this is why people think they need to take their antidepressants like their morning vitamins, because they think that they have this chemical imbalance that is not going to be helped unless they take this drug. Well, in reality, if they get to the underlying cause of depression, they won't need the medication at all. Their neurotransmitters will be in plentiful amounts, and there is no need to relapse. Our experience in our clinic is that once we find the underlying cause of depression, there's a 90% chance that that person will not relapse back into depression again, even after they're off their medication. And that, of course, is something that's significant, but it helps us to realize treating the underlying cause, the underlying hits, is the answer to this problem. Drug therapy is not the final answer.
And basically, your program is designed around the 8 health principles, right? Nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, good air, rest, and trusting in God. Right?
All of those principles have actually been shown to be helpful in rigorous scientific studies for depression.
So the Lord developed all of this. We've got 2 minutes to get some final thoughts from you. If you would, I would like to ask you about the frontal lobe, and I also would like to ask you to mention about your 14 consecutive days of positive thinking.
All right, thank you. The frontal lobe is what we really haven't covered, and that's the most exciting area of depression. There's one thing that's characteristic of virtually any depressed patient, and that is they have a 40% decrease in circulation and activity of the frontal lobe of the brain. We find this in PET scans. The frontal lobe is where spirituality, morality, and the will is centered. And so this is why the spiritual part, such as reading the book of Proverbs, reading Psalms, reading the scripture, and not just reading it, but contemplating on it, can dramatically improve frontal lobe function and actually significantly improve depression. This is why the classical music, which has a very positive effect on the frontal lobe, can be very helpful as well. And this is also why cognitive behavioral therapy is helpful. Traditional forms of counseling or psychotherapy have never been shown to be better than taking a placebo pill in treating depression. I don't know if you caught that at all, but traditional forms of counseling, what psychologists do on a day-by-day basis, has never been shown to be superior to taking a placebo. But there is a type of therapy that is superior. It's called cognitive behavioral therapy. The psychology world is starting to catch up on this. And what is this? It actually helps us to recognize our distorted thoughts. Another thing that's virtually characteristic of every depressed patient is that they have significant distortions in their thought processes. They have their thoughts that are based on elements of truth, but they go beyond those elements of truth and actually dwell on distortions. And it's the dwelling on distortions that helps bring about the depression. And so we teach them the 10 cognitive distortions, such as overgeneralization and mental filter. And this mental filter tends to focus in on the negative. And one of the ways in which we get them focusing in on things that are not so negative is one of the practices in our depression recovery program: 14 consecutive days without saying anything negative or critical about anyone or anything. Now, when they find out about this, they thought, well, I thought I came here to relieve stress. This is going to really increase my stress level. But in reality, once they try it, it does produce a transformation, because it helps them to get their circuits going in the brain that are either neutral or positive, and it helps to overdo the negative. And then once they catch themselves in the thought processes of overgeneralizing or disqualifying the positive, or magnification or minimization or mind reading, these type of things, they can catch themselves in that thought process and replace their thoughts with truth. And interestingly, Christ himself says, when you know the truth will set you free. And that means the truth in the heart, not just expressing it outwardly, but knowing and actually having our thoughts line up with things that are absolutely true and not going on the basis of assumptions, which many depressed people do.
Amen. Oh, thank you so much. We just really want to thank our guests today, Sandy Williams and Colleen Harrell and Dr. Neil Nedley. And we want to thank you for joining us. I do want to point out one thing. If you know someone who is plagued by negative thoughts, please don't tell them to snap out of it. Please get them some help. Help them through. Get this book. Help them to go through the process. But I want to leave you with Philippians chapter 4 and verse 8. Paul wrote, whatever is true, whatever is worthy, whatever is of reverence and honorable, whatever is just and pure, lovely, kind and winsome and gracious, anything that is of virtue and worthy of praise, think on these things. Take them into account. Weigh them in your mind. Fix your thoughts on these. But he also went on in the next verse, said, and practice what you have learned and received and heard and seen, and model this way of living, and the God of peace will be with you. Thank you so much for joining us.